Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hey guys, I'm Beck and I'm an ENFJ and my brother is an ESTJ and we don't get along. I mean, I don't know if he knows that we don't get along, but I definitely notice that we don't get along. I love my brother, but I find him to be so rude and abrupt and uncaring about people's feelings and where they're coming from. Like, he doesn't have time to see it from their perspective. It just is how it is. And I guess what I want to know is, how can I get information out of him and deal with him and hang out with him without being completely offended and frustrated with how he, does his thing? Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the question. So as an ENFJ, it's really the question, how do I relate to the ESTJ in my life that I perceive to be rude and crude and not give anybody space and just bulldoze over everybody in the world? I can't even talk to this person. They're so offensive to me. It's upsetting to me to even communicate with them, but it's my brother. I love him. What do I do, Joel and Antonia? How do I solve this challenge in my life?
Well, I also have an ETJ as a brother.
That's right, you do.
So I can give some sympathy on this. I don't find him rude and crude, but I do understand that feeling of being. It's very easy to emotionally disconnect, or at least it feels that way, particularly as a family member. Or sometimes we're looking for somebody to be emotionally available, and they don't feel particularly emotionally available. And when we're looking for that, those of us who use extroverted feeling or harmony, which you do as an ENFJ, it's your dominant or driver function. Sometimes when we feel like there's not that connection going with the other person, it's much more difficult to forgive them when they do obnoxious things. Like when we're in a rapport with another person and there's energy going back and forth and they do something obnoxious, it's much easier for us to chalk it up as like a foible or an idiosyncrasy or maybe charming even, depending upon how much rapport we're in with the person. But if we're finding ourselves really struggling to have an energetic rapport with the other individual, then now we're a lot less forgiving of all those offenses. So that might be a piece of it. Another challenge might be that, just looking at it purely in type terms and your cognitive functions and your full 8 stack. So we're talking John Beebe's model of all 8 functions. You two are literally the reverse opposite of each other. Like, your dominant or driver function is your brother's 8th function. It's his very, very last. And the same goes for you in reverse. His dominant or driver function of extroverted thinking or effectiveness is your 8th or your last. Your secondary or auxiliary function of introverted intuition or perspectives is his 7th function. And that also applies the other direction. His second function or auxiliary or co-pilot of introverted sensing or memory is your 7th function. So we're talking about functions that are very removed from each other. If you're just going to look at it through the lens of, an idea of like, well, I understand how that person is entering the world. I understand the relationship with how things work. I can kind of get how they're wired or, what's going on for them. The further down that function goes in the stack, particularly when you're talking about 7th and 8th functions, those are much tougher to forgive, to make space for when they're showing up in a way that doesn't quite gel with you. So you've got that going on as well. And then I think third, people of the same type can show up very different depending upon their life circumstances and their personal interests. So there might be a layer of this that has nothing to do with type. You might have an ESTJ in your life that you actually really love and admire and find them to be a delight and a joy because of circumstances and situations and maybe maturation, like the maturity level and the developments and all those other things that fall outside of type. They might be perfectly fine for you. And in this situation, you've got somebody that we're just the cocktail together, like how it all fits together is just rubbing you the wrong way.
I think you are asking the right question, though. As an ENFJ, again, you're going to be driving with that harmony process, that extroverted feeling process, and it's externally focused. It really has this perspective that it understands social dynamics, how people should be living their lives, how they should be relating to each other. And what I see a lot of extroverted feeling or harmony drivers do is they attempt to correct the problem out in another person or out in society, external of themselves. But you're asking the right question, saying, what can I do? Maybe I can't change my brother. Maybe I can't change the external world, but I do have influence and control over my own self. And so I just want to commend you and any other EFJs that are listening, ESFJs or ENFJs that are asking that question. I think it's a brilliant question because it focuses it back on what you have power and control over.
Yeah, it's definitely a superpower when FJs own challenges in relationships, for sure. I think when it comes to somebody who is wired in a way that's so different, I think there's two layers to this. The first one is conceptual, because I think especially when you lead with a feeling function, it's hard not to make things personal. It's very easy to personalize almost everything. And I think the key for you is to go into, your auxiliary or co-pilot function of introverted intuition or perspectives. And I don't mean go into it to just shift perspectives and see how your brother is seeing things. I mean go to a very conceptual, depersonalized place, actually, and see if you can find what the core value of the functions he's using are. What are the core gifts, I guess the word would be, of extroverted thinking or effectiveness and introverted sensing or memory? Why do these functions need to exist? Why are they crucial and imperative? What do they do for us? Why do we forgive these functions when they don't show up perfectly? Because they're bringing so many other things to the table. Like, why are they crucial? And what are critical things that would collapse if these functions didn't exist?
I want to make a recommendation right now. We've actually recorded podcasts on this subject where you can go listen to why the world needs extroverted thinking or effectiveness. We have an entire podcast about it, almost an hour of recording. And then we also have one about introverted sensing or memory. Why does the world need this? So we've addressed this on the main podcast. Go look that up at personalityhacker.com. I think that would really help this situation particularly.
Right. It's almost like you have to understand the meaning of these functions. And so as you watch them develop over time, because the other thing is, I don't know how old you are. I don't know how old your brother is. But my suspicion is a part of this is also just development and maturity. So what do these functions look like when they're a little younger? What do they look like when they're not seasoned yet? And then what do they look like when they're seasoned? So what do you have to look forward to? If your brother chooses to become a more developed person, and almost everybody just can't help but get more seasoned over time, unless they have like an addiction issue that's keeping them, synthetically immature, then most people figure some stuff out as they live, right? They figure things out as they go through relationships and relationship upheavals and breakups. They learn things as they go through, idealism around career and job, and then, something gives them kind of a come to Jesus moment around that too. Like, we get a lot of these moments in life that teach us lessons that it just takes time to figure out. And I would argue that people who use introverted sensing or memory are some of the best at learning from those lessons. They're really good at taking the lessons and really, integrating them and implementing those lessons in their life. So it could just be that your brother's not seasoned. So you've got a couple different things going on then. You have wildly different wiring, which makes it so that you don't have a natural sense of simpatico. And you have something that only time itself can solve, truly. And then you might also have another component where you just don't have a lot of shared interests and values, which is another piece of it. You're family, but that doesn't mean you are into the same stuff or think the same thoughts or hold the same worldviews. I mean, the likelihood that you have the same worldview is higher because you've had the same indoctrination throughout your life, but that doesn't mean that that's where you land as adults once you start reevaluating your worldviews and paradigms, and you might end up very different there as well. So you've got a couple different things or a couple different fronts you might be quote unquote fighting. But I would say that gratitude is something that helps overcome a lot of that. So if you can understand and appreciate how he's wired and how those functions in concept are so critical and important, and then see if you can match up the functions themselves, like why they're so great, right? The gifts they bring to the world, with moments when he's bringing those gifts to the world personally. So the first stage is impersonal, but the second stage is deeply personal. How is he bringing those gifts to the world, even though sometimes they also come with challenges, right? What are the ways in which he's showing up? And then what are ways that he's showing up more now than he was maybe 10 years ago? And how have you seen it develop over time? The fact that you don't have introverted sensing or memory as one of your cognitive functions in your car means that you're not going to be tapped into noticing changes over time like he is. Or just in general, like people who have this function. You're not going to notice growth as much. You're going to see things sort of more conceptually and in the moment. But if you were to track it, is there improvement? Is he getting better? There might be some ways in which he's not improving, but can you see an overall trend of getting more mature, particularly in the last 10 years? And if so, then are there ways that you can help facilitate that trajectory? Like keep encouraging maturing. And then there are other ways that you can mature as an individual. And is it okay that not everybody shows up with graciousness and diplomacy? Is there a place in the world for being a little bit more aggressive or maybe a little bit more crude? Like, is there a place for that as well? I would say really get into that introverted intuition or perspectives function to conceptualize all of it. And I don't just mean shift into it. Like I said before, don't just shift into his perspective, but shift into a meta perspective on the entire situation and see if there's a bit of a softening there. And then finally, you don't have to be best friends with your brother. And I know that is somebody who's not best friends with my brother. Like sometimes you just kind of let them be, they're who they are and you're who you are. And you do your best to not ruffle feathers, and you hope you could be there to support when times are tough. And if that person can't be there for you, or, however it pans out, then that's just what's happening. And it's okay, right? It's okay to not be BFFs with people in your family. But can you still show up as a good family member and just give them some space? That might be how it pans out too. And all of that's okay. There's really no reason to judge it.
Thank you so much for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. If you're focused on personal growth, I think you'll resonate with our core content over at personalityhacker.com. We want to see you understand how your mind is wired so you can generate motivation, improve social skills, find career opportunities, and master excellent decision making. But a quick warning. We are advice and action focused in all of our articles, podcasts, and videos. This means that we attract people who like to be challenged to become excellent, to take action, to put in the work to optimize themselves, not simply just gather more information. If you are committed to personal growth and ready to radically find your inner truth, then come over and be a part of our growing community of like minds at Personality Hacker.